The first time a girl participated in a national beauty pageant to stabilize herself, she still couldn't resist that inexplicable power. In the end, she fell into the cruelty of others. The light of life was also extinguished. But the girl never dreamed that the sudden death would completely change her life. The mother specially looked for the best local cosmetician. She wanted her daughter to stay beautiful at the last moment. That's it. The girl was sent to the infirmary. After removing the white cloth on the girl's body, Nick sadly poured himself a glass of red wine. Looking at the girl's super annoying face, his thoughts returned to the scene where he met the girl for the first time. In a blink of an eye, Nick was attracted by the girl's beautiful face. Unexpectedly, he met the girl again, but he was on the stage with a corpse makeup. When the beautiful face of that day appeared again, Nick was indifferently immersed in the appreciation. However, this appreciation gradually warmed up and evolved into an indescribable emotional. Nick quietly went up. At this subtle moment, seen. Not long after, the girl finally calmed down. Nick quickly regained his consciousness and walked into his side with a steady step. He saw clearly that he could feel the girl's weak but firm breathing, without any hesitation. Nick quickly dialed the ambulance and went through an emergency treatment. The girl finally woke up in the hospital. At that moment, the fresh light shone in her clear hair. However, a vague image suddenly appeared. The miracle of resurrection made Ella the focus of attention of the media. For a moment, her mother took advantage of this opportunity and accepted various advertisements and invitations from the program. They started to shoot all kinds of filming all day. Ella, who has experienced death, was very resentful of her mother's arrangement. Contest, she paid an unimaginable price. For a whole month she maintained a fragile body. Even before she went on stage, she also vomited. But all the sacrifices turned out to be the disappearance of life. However, fate seemed to be lenient with her and gave her a chance to be reborn. And this time, visit. And Ella was eager to explain. She just wanted to get back the lost memory. When she heard this explanation, Nick's vigilance in his heart was slightly released. So, you should probably get going. Oh, it's fine. I don't want you to go out of your way or anything. Ella was a polite toy. But Nick nodded very cooperatively. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Ella took the initiative to stay overnight. She planned to leave the next morning. Nick stood still for a few seconds, but he still agreed to Ella's request. The next morning, Nick prepared breakfast for Ella. And when Ella was eating, Nick's eyes were on her. Her every move was confusing. Are you gonna eat? No, I'm good. After the meal, Nick was going to send Ella away. But Ella said she didn't want to go home. She also asked Nick to keep her for a few days. After Nick heard this, there was a panic in his heart. He was afraid that the truth would be exposed, and he couldn't bear to refuse the beautiful lady in front of him. However, his rationality finally won over his emotions. I don't think it's a very good idea. By now. But when Ella really left, Nick was deeply regretful again. And Ella, who was despondent, just stepped into the house and was surrounded by reporters. Her mother was impatient toward her plea. They even buried her in the cold mud. The overwhelming feeling of suffocation woke her up from her dream. Tears rolled down like broken pearls. And at that moment, she realized this place that was called home couldn't help her at all. So the next day, she knocked on Nick's door again with a determined heart. She begged Nick to take her in for a few days. She could even live in the shabbiest stable. Looking at this poor girl in front of her, Nick's heart was filled with anxiety. And this time, he chose to let go of all his worries and follow his heart. Then Nick took Ella to his mother's room and prepared the right clothes for her. On the other side, his mother also found that his daughter had left home. He was very worried. He didn't know that his daughter was in the embrace of freedom. He and Nick's father played golf together. And in the process, Nick shared his story with Ella. Because of his mother's accidental suicide, his father gradually lost his consciousness and developed Alzheimer's disease. And in order to cure his father, he was forced to give up his dream and took over the clinic from his father. And after a long time of contact with the body, he gradually lost his passion for life. Hearing this, Ella also had a similar helplessness. She was also forced to do a job she didn't love. Maybe it's because of each other's similarities. Or maybe it's because of that inexplicable power. Ella had a different affection for Nick. They would paint the house together. They would stand on the ladder and admire the sunset. They would play together. Laughter filled every corner. However, Ella's mother was anxious. Because her daughter hadn't come back yet, she decided to call the police. She even published a search warrant in the newspaper. The next morning, Nick woke Ella up carefully and placed the search warrant on the ground. But Ella just smiled calmly. She still didn't plan to go home. On the day of painting the wall, Ella suddenly looked at the open space opposite and asked why she didn't plant some crops. And Nick claimed that it was a barren land and nothing would grow. But Ella had hope and believed that this land could reproduce. So they came to the town and bought a lot of seeds. As for what kind of seeds, Ella didn't tell Nick. The farming began. Ella was full of enthusiasm, careful in turning the soil and planting. But the father and son still had no hope. But no one would have thought that what would grow out of this land would save Nick's life. When Ella was in a bad mood, the police car slowly came. The father and son rushed to deal with it and soon sent the officer away. At nightfall, Ella and Nick sat on the suspension bridge and watched the vast night sky. The two began to open their hearts and talk about each other's worries. And in the darkness of the night, Ella suddenly kissed Men. The father insisted that he could take care of himself and persuaded Nick to accompany Ella. Under the father's guidance, the two of them were like eloping. They set out on an unknown journey but just came out of the house. Ella was in tears. She was full of attachment and reluctance to this period of time. She felt unprecedented happiness and freedom. It was as if the whole world was embraced by the sun. But now, in the face of the upcoming new chapter, Ella's heart is full of unprecedented confusion and helplessness. With this complicated mood, the two of them drove forward. The night was dark and the stars were with them. They didn't dare to stop. The next day, when they arrived at their destination, Ella told Nick that she had no friends. This trip was just to pursue that long-awaited freedom. Looking at Ella's happy face, Nick suddenly realized that what she was pursuing was that simple and pure freedom. They would go shopping together and take the Ferris wheel together. They would play with each other and ride the merry-go-round together. They would also enjoy the sun and the moon together. Their feelings suddenly warmed up on the journey. But the waves of fate did not calm down. Ella's mother sneaked into Nick's house and found a photo in his studio. The content of the photo shocked her. She thought Nick had lost his mind. And the two of them, who knew nothing about it, were still spilling their youth. Until that day, they came to a gas station. The shopkeeper recognized Ella at a glance. Looking at Nick waiting outside, the shopkeeper chose to call the police without hesitation. Ella noticed something was wrong with the shopkeeper. Then, a shocking photo came into her sight. She found Nick's unknown side. Nick also saw the news and the two was broken. Nick regained his freedom, but found that the door to his home was blocked by the reporters. And what made him more heartbroken was that his father was lying in the rain. No matter how he called, he couldn't wake up his sleeping father. In the end, he lost his only family, the prejudice and indifference of society. As if this rain completely extinguished his passion for life, losing his family, losing his career. Nick's world seemed to be shrouded. He sat at his father's table and thought for a long time. In the end, he planned to end his life. However, fate's still a life worth cherishing and pursuing. Facing the stormy reporters, Nick did not retreat. He chose to bravely stand up and decided to pursue Ella again. At the same time, Ella was also in the abyss of despair, trying to end everything in an extreme way. He pushed the TV with his feet slowly for a long time on his face. Although Nick didn't know if he would get Ella's response, he knew that he had bravely taken that step. And in this sunflower sea, 2 stars were getting closer. What the hell are you doing? Did something happen for the very first time with you? I don't know. I'm waiting for you to get here. I'm listening to the ground bounce something true. And everyone's looking around thinking how much more they are to see in their lives. The 2 of them lie together in the sunflower sea. As if all the sorrows were resolved by this sea. They know no matter how many difficulties and challenges they will encounter in the future, as long as they walk together, they will definitely be able to move towards a better future. And this sunflower sea will also remain in their memories forever and become the most beautiful page in their love story.